Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us bright and early. So when I got asked to moderate this session and I heard the title was The Next Food Revolution, I got a little uneasy. What are we going to be focusing on? Well, we're going to talk about some transformations in our food system. We're going to talk about the impact and role of technology in moving our food system forward. We're going to talk about some trends, and there might be a little bit of tension. But I think what we need to focus on is our shared goal. Everybody, I'm assuming everybody in this room, wants to ensure that we have healthy food, healthy people, and a healthy planet. And if we're running businesses, we want to do this with healthy profits. We want to see farmers engaged in sustainable agriculture, growing more with less land and less environmental impact, while also enjoying sustainable income and profits. And we want the benefits of local food production because it enhances access to safe, affordable, healthful, and sometimes even more flavorful foods, which we'll hear about from one of our panelists. We want opportunities to apply science and technology, and we want to be able to measure impact. But what are the problems that need to be solved? What are the benefits across the value chain that we need to gain? We're facing attacks on science. We're fighting a war on science. And today we're discussing the next food revolution. So let me begin by introducing our panelists. To my right here is David Rosenberg. David's the co-founder and CEO of AeroFarms, a clean technology company that builds and operates advanced vertical farms in urban environments. David's a member of the World Economic Forum, where he chairs the Young Global Leaders Circular Economy Task Force. David received his BA from UNC Chapel Hill and an MBA from Columbia University. Next to David, we have Bryn Banuelos. She's the marketing director for food and drug retailer Safeway, where she is responsible for leading the marketing efforts of the Education Loyalty Program and with major partners such as Chevron and Exxon. Before joining Safeway, Bryn held several positions within the Clorox Company, and she also served as a Foreign Service Officer for the U.S. Department of State. And then we have Mike Frank. Mike is the Chief Commercial Officer for the Monsanto Company, a leading global provider of technology-based solutions and agricultural products that help farmers produce abundant and nutritious food for a growing world while conserving natural resources through improved farming practices. Mike has a very small role within Monsanto. He's only responsible for the company's row crop operations and vegetable business across all geographies. So, welcome, panelists. So we want the audience to get to know you a little bit better. What is your role? And I would like each of you to address this. What's your role in the next food revolution?
At AeroFarms, our mission is to build big farms at scale locally so everyone has access to fresh, great-tasting, nutritious, safe food. So among other things, we're building the largest vertical farm in Newark, New Jersey. And vertical farms, like we define it, layer upon layer of growing material. So to paint a picture, imagine a tunnel about from here to the end of the room. It's about 80 feet. Every 3 feet, you have another plane of growing. And our growth media is a cloth. It's actually a fleece-like material that replaces soil. So it's soil and sunless agriculture. We see it on the cloth. The air in AeroFarms is aeroponics. So we miss nutrition of the root structure. The roots want oxygen. The leaves want carbon dioxide. We give the plants what they want, when they want it, how they want it. And the plants journey down this tunnel. And about a foot above the seed, we give them, they don't need sun, they need spectrum. They need different spectrum. They don't need all the spectrum. So we give them different spectrum they want. We take away some of the spectrum they don't want. For example, yellow spectrum's the big energy hog in lights, and the plants don't need a lot of yellow spectrum, so that's an example of something we take away. And net, we could produce a plant, seed to harvest, in 16 days versus 30 days. In the field, that typically equates to 3 crop turns a year because of seasonality. We have about 25, and we do that using 95% less water, 50% less fertilizers, and about zero pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. And my biggest surprise is the taste is fantastic. So our mission is to build these in cities all over. We're building our 9th one now, and for obvious, beautiful reasons, hope to come to Aspen.
So David's been telling me the past few days about his kale, and I do want you to tell the audience the crops that you grow. He's been trying to convince me that he has the most delicious kale, and I'm a known kale hater. So David, I think success for you as a farmer would be to get me to like and enjoy kale, but tell us about the other crops you grow.
So we've grown about 250 different types of leafy greens. We want to bring back heirloom varieties. Most people can name maybe 10. And there are some great varieties, and we often have these great greens that are highly nutritious, and then we cook it up with these unhealthy salad dressings. So at Aero Farms, we often eat without salad dressings, or maybe just a little oil and vinaigrette, because you could bring back these great tastes. You give an example with kale to build on that. Most people who don't like kale don't like it because it's a very rough leaf. If you had the salad here yesterday, it was kind of gooked up because it's a rough leaf. And it's also very bitter. So we could take the same seed and stress it in a way to make it softer and sweeter. So we kind of flip the typical farming model on its head, where most farmers, they sort of take the genetics and match it to the natural environment. We flip that and match the environment to the genetics. So giving the plant, understanding what it wants from a nutrients, whether it's nutrients, micronutrients, different spectrum, different temperature, pH, humidity, and then amplifying that to do things like the same seed, we can make it sweeter, we can make it more tender. Just like if you spend a lot of time outside, you'll get sunburned, or if you get in this air-conditioned room, you might get goosebumps. In the same way, that changes your biochemistry. We could change the plant's phytochemistry just by stressing it different ways and amplifying these qualities.
So you have an intensely technology-driven operation that sells into retailers in the Northeast. Let's hear from the retailer on our panel. Bryn, what's your role in the next food revolution?
Well, Albertsons Companies, of which Safeway is a part, is one of the leading grocery retailers in the country. And so one of our biggest roles to play is really bringing these new food products and technologies to consumers. All the things that David's talking about with Aero Farms and the tender greens, whether they show up in our produce department, in our service deli, that's where consumers are going to experience them. We also create new products. We launch hundreds of products a year in our own brands portfolio. We have over 20 private label brands. And I would say another key role that we play in the next food revolution is really understanding what consumers want. Because we have tens of millions of shoppers that come through our stores every single week. We have 2,200 stores across the country. And so we have an opportunity to partner with companies like Aero Farms and understand, what's the consumer perception of this product? What's their purchase interest, and understanding what the key messages need to be to really maximize consumer interest in this new food technology, and how to communicate it in a way that makes it compelling. So for us, it's really a two-way street, because we're helping to bring new products and technologies to consumers, but we're also helping to understand what they want to see from all of us in the future.
Yeah, you did a great job of the complexity of being a retailer and the communications challenges. There is such intense scrutiny of our food system right now. Social media drives a lot of information, a lot of misinformation. We talked a bit last night about different potential labeling claims that Aero Farms may go after, and then the challenge for you to help the consumer understand that. Mike, let's move on to you, because you also work in a challenging space serving the needs of farmers globally. What's your role in the next food revolution?
Yeah, thank you, Amy, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. So yeah, I guess we work in a challenging area, but I think it's also a very exciting area. I personally grew up on a farm in Canada, so I've always been involved in agriculture. And as a company, Monsanto works at the start of the value chain. We work with farmers around the world, and our focus is on innovation and how do you make farmers more productive, more efficient, and more environmentally sustainable. And the issues around food security is a global issue, but agriculture is very local. And so, we focus on how do you improve seed and bring seed and seed technologies to farmers? How do you help them optimize the inputs that they use on their farm? And increasingly, we're focusing on data, and how do you use data science and algorithms to help farmers make good decisions, often multivariable decisions. How do you help them make better decisions on their farm that lead to more productivity and more environmental sustainability? And so that's what we're focused on in agriculture. The rate of innovation is going through the roof, and so there's so much exciting things going on right now in agriculture, and we're kind of at the forefront as we work with farmers.
You touched on an issue of choice. giving the farmer choice so that he or she can be most sustainable, most profitable, have the best experience. Bryn, how do you guys think about the issue of choice within your operation?
Well, choice for us, it's really all about giving the consumer all the choices that they want to be able to select from. It takes a particular local spin with us. Our mission as a company is really to be our customers' favorite local supermarket. So we think of choices, we want to make sure that we're offering choices to our consumers that they want in that particular geography. And so that means doing a lot of customization of our products. You know, we serve different clam chowder in Seattle than we do in Boston, okay? We make different barbecue ribs in Texas than we do in Missouri, because it's really all about catering to our local shoppers' tastes, the regional, local, ethnic tastes, and deeply understanding that market so we can offer the choices that they want.
Mike, back to you.
Yeah.
How does the impact of the local environment affect what you're doing in development of products throughout the world?
Yeah, so this idea of choice, I think, is incredibly important. And, you know, obviously, consumers need to have choice in the products that they want to consume and serve their families. And just the same, I think farmers need choice. And farmers, you know, my experience with farmers is there's no better environmental stewards in the world than farmers. They're often looking at their land to say how can they pass it on to the next generation. And so farmers make really good choices when they have the availability of the tools that you can put in front of them. And so I think the idea of choice is very important, and you know, choice in one area will be different than in a different area. And so I think it's an important topic.
Absolutely. You know, we talked a little bit at our dinner last night about, you know, consumer perception of farmers doing X, Y, or Z, and maybe the lack of understanding of you know, location and soil type and climate conditions really critically important to how the farmer operates. Quickly for each of you, I'd like to know, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now in your business?
For us, it's, and then if I could also respond to the choice piece. For us, it's technology in the sense of there's so many first-time evers in the world that Aero Farms is taking on. We're building the biggest one ever. We're also very data-centric and trying to understand plants in another way. In a fully controlled agriculture, there's an opportunity to really understand how to stress a plant just by manipulating the airflow and or adding more CO2. There are lots of ways to change this phytochemistry and develop not just taste and texture, but also change nutritional density. So we take, from that seed to harvest, we take about 30,000 data points. At our big farm, that equates to 24 million data points a day. So we have all these smart people trying to figure out what are the correlations, what are the links of what it means. And doing that while we're also innovating on the mechanical side. We have automation in seeding, harvesting, cleaning, packaging. Some of that's in the prototype phase. Our harvesting and packaging is already built out, but there's a lot of engineering oomph to get that going. On the choice side, real quick, it also, for Aero Farms, there's a social mission to what we do. We build these in tough environments, so places where there are food deserts. So in Newark, where we're going, there hasn't been a new supermarket built in over a decade. So there's a big food desert. People don't have access to fresh food. So we open our doors, allow the public to come in and buy directly from us. And we also certainly sell to the local supermarkets. And then we're also, it's about hiring locally. So we're able to provide a lot of jobs. We're also hiring some past offenders. And also making sure fundamentally at the culture standpoint, everyone knows why we're in this. We're in this to not just build a farm, but help change the world, bring these options of local food variety, and also do it in a way, so like our growth medium is 100% recycled material, but foundationally making sure people are thinking, how do we move in a direction where we're better stewards for the environment, as well as have a better and bigger social impact.
So back to the challenge, your challenge is big data, but it also creates the opportunity to advance your business. Bryn, biggest challenge in your industry right now?
Biggest challenge for us is just that the grocery industry is incredibly competitive. It always has been, but it's really ramping up in that direction. Part of that is just the incredible diversity of our shoppers, economic pressures, and just the multitude of choices in different channels that our customers have. And people are seeking more fresh, more unique, more relevant products and shopping experiences, and all of that competes with us. So, to be honest with you, the majority of our shoppers, they buy their groceries in 6 or 7 different retail outlets every month. So we're really competing head to head with a lot of different retailers out there. And so our challenge is to always be extremely relevant and really be tailored to that local market environment that they're looking for. And I know we've been talking about big data. We are very much a data-driven company. A large portion of our company has club card information, and we really mine that to understand deeply what consumers are looking for and then tailor our offerings in each and every one of our stores to meet that. So it's a very challenging environment, but we've got a passion to win everywhere where we operate.
Mike, biggest challenge for you?
Yeah, so Amy, I think the biggest challenge is really a triangulation of forces. And so on the one hand, if you look at the next 30 years in population growth and economic growth projections, it's estimated that farmers need to double their productivity to feed the growing planet. And they need to do that on the same footprint of land that they have today. And so that's an enormous challenge. And at the same time, on top of that, you have climate change. And climate change is making farming more challenging around the world, whether it's droughts in one area or floods in another area. And so climate change is impacting agriculture, and it's making it more challenging. And then the other side of the triangle is, you called it a war on science, and I just think, there's a disconnect. Here in the US, less than 2% of the population is directly involved in agriculture. So there's a large disconnect today about the tools and the science that farmers are using and the benefit of them versus the concern about them. And a recent Pew Research study showed that there's no bigger disconnect between scientific consensus on a topic and the disconnect with society. And the biggest disconnect is in this area of GM technology, where 89% of scientists in the US believe that there's clear evidence that GM technologies are safe. It's higher than the scientific consensus on climate change. It's higher than the scientific consensus on the benefit and safety of vaccines. And yet the consumer comfort with GM technologies is very low. And so we as a company, and it's why this dialogue is so important, we need to do a better job of helping broader society understand, why do farmers need these tools? Because over the next 30 years, if we're going to help farmers double productivity, it's going to be technology tools that do that. If you just go back 30 years in the US, so in the US is the most productive agricultural country in the world. 30 years ago, in 1985, farmers produced on average 80 bushels to the acre of corn. Last year, they produced over 160 bushels to the acre. So they doubled productivity in 30 years, and they did that because of technology. Better seed technology, better inputs, more precise inputs, better machinery technology. So these are the tools that farmers need in order to continue to advance and ultimately feed a growing, hungrier planet.
So are we going to be able to double production in the next 30 years?
Well, yes, the innovation capability is definitely there. And again, it's not just productivity. There's a great poster on walking in here about food waste. And so I think it's a combination of factors. It's less waste, better storage in countries like in sub-Saharan Africa and throughout Asia, and helping farmers be more productive. And so it's all these things that have to come together and work to feed the planet.
So Dr. Rob Fraley mentioned yesterday morning on a panel something that really stuck with me, and it was crop protection for farmers and how that's part of the food waste issue. That, we think about food waste, pre-consumer, post-consumer, but food waste on the farm when there's attacks by insects and weeds, affecting yield, that's a really big issue for us to address as well. David, when I asked that question about are we going to be able to double production in the next 30 years, you shook your head ever so slightly. I mean, do you think we're going to be able to do it? And what are the tools to get there?
It's hard to quantify, but I totally agree with Mike. It's the problem's big. It's also water. So 60% of our fresh water, that is polluted from agriculture. About 60% of our fresh water goes to agriculture. If you look at the trends in growing population, urbanization, depletion of our arable land, we need a new food paradigm, and we need to embrace technologies multifaceted along the whole supply chain, at the retailer, at the distributors, at the ag tech companies, at the farmers, new innovations in farming. I'm optimistic that we're going to have these solutions. If you just look at the cost, so today we sell at the same price to the retailers as the field farmers in the category of organics. And if you look at the cost curve, one of our biggest cost of goods sold, for example, is LEDs, light emitting diodes. Most people are familiar with Moore's Law, which talks about computing power doubling every 18 months. There's something called Heitz's Law, which talks about the efficiency of a diode improving by a half every 3 years. So if you just look at that Heitz's Law curve, you understand how the cost structure, both CapEx and OpEx, are moving in the right direction. It makes a technology like vertical farming more prevalent, so it's not just in leafy greens, but it goes to more categories. But the point here is it's a multifaceted approach. It's a whole supply chain approach. The technology, the data science is going to open up opportunities across the whole supply chain.
So Bryn, let's go to that issue of communicating some of these tough issues with consumers. What's your role in that? Albertsons, Safeway's role, I mean, the role of communication in our food system.
Absolutely. When Mike was talking about that, I just thought, that's my job, is really how to translate benefits into compelling consumer communication. And it is also one of our biggest challenges. He mentioned GMO products, and despite so much significant scientific evidence and over 20 years of in-market experience with GMO products and being safe, we still have a lot of consumer concerns. And our shoppers want to know what's in their food. They want to know if it's GMO. And so what we really need is a cohesive regulatory framework to really guide how we communicate those benefits to consumers. And so we support the bipartisan law that recently passed the Senate Ag Committee because we need a consistent way to communicate across the country. We can't make a state-by-state solution work, given the costs and given the logistics. We need to communicate very consistently to our shoppers about GMO and other claims. They want to know, and kind of one of my key jobs is to keep it really simple, because I'll tell you, people don't need technology and they don't want to know the details about it. I need to come up with ways to communicate those benefits in a very simple and compelling way. So that's something that we think about every day in our business.
Yeah. If I can just jump in, Amy, so last week I was in China and I was visiting with some farmers in the northern part of China in Heilongjiang province, and this area of waste and how to manage agriculture and think about the whole piece. Today in China, if you've ever been in a corn growing region in China, you'll go through there at harvest time and you'll see ears of corn on the side of the road after harvest drying, or on the roof of their homes. And it's amazing because you drive down the highways and there's corn on the shoulders of the highways. And in Heilongjiang, the farmers there have realized that if they can find a corn hybrid that dries down on the plant, like the hybrids in the US do, that instead of harvesting the whole ear, they can just take the grain off the ear at harvest time with mechanical harvesters. And so we're bringing them those hybrids. And the problem, if you're letting your corn dry on the side of the road, there's all kinds of funguses that can spoil the corn. There's other predators that can cause waste. And so a lot of these are simple, but they make a difference when you add them up. And so, I know there's a large conversation about GMO technology, and that is clearly I believe, one of the important tools. But there are so many tools, and I think sometimes the conversation on GM is bigger than it needs to be because there's so many other tools that farmers need. And I think the other big point is all forms of agriculture need to be more productive to feed the planet and be more sustainable, whether that's organic agriculture. And as a company, we have a lot of customers that buy our seed, especially in our vegetable business, that are organic producers, and conventional farming. And so it's not one system versus another system from my perspective. It's how do you make all of agriculture more sustainable, more efficient, and more productive?
Beautifully said. I'm going to ask the panelists a few more questions, and then we're going to turn it over to audience Q&A. So think about what you'd like to ask our esteemed panelists. I think as we wrap up our discussion here, 2 questions for you. What keeps you awake at night? So we'll go down the row, and then I'll do the concluding question. What most worries you as we think about the future of food and the next food revolution?
In our world, it's a lot of complexity. I mean, there's, again, a lot of first-time ever, so pulling it all together at scale and is just, on the biological side, on the mechanical side, on the SOP, standard operating procedures, we have a lot of people working together. Aero Farms, we're the leader in the space, but it's still where everyone's relatively young in the space, so there's still a lot to coordinate. I've become less concerned. I used to think, like, what's the response from the customer as they look at products grown without sun and soil, and that has become less of a concern. And
Good.
My biggest surprise here, like the knock on indoor food is it doesn't taste good, and we've been able to completely debunk that myth. And this is less a vertical farming or greenhouse farming thing, it's more of an Aero Farms thing today, but in the future other people are going to get it, and it's just understanding how you could really stress a plant, and so it keeps me up, all this complexity. At the same time, it makes me really excited about where the opportunity is and how this could really be utilized, how data science could make growing so much more effective. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg of understanding, and again, it's going to unlock a lot of opportunity.
So it's not easy being a pioneer, but the effort is worth it.
Absolutely.
Bryn, what keeps you awake at night?
So food safety keeps me awake at night. There's no business problem that compares just to the scariness of a customer potentially getting sick from food that we sell in our stores. We take food safety incredibly seriously. We've constructed a culinary kitchens and technical center in our facility in Pleasanton, California. And we employ a large team of food scientists to really evaluate all the products that we sell in our stores, not just the ones that we develop and market, but also the national brands that are marketed in our stores as well, because it's in our best interest and it's part of our role as a retailer to make sure that the quality specifications have been achieved and also that the food safety is there and all the regulatory requirements have been met. So food safety is really the number one most important thing that we can really provide day in and day out, and it definitely keeps me awake at night.
And Mike?
Yeah, no, that's great. So I think, making sure that farmers have access to technology in the future, I think that's the most important thing that we do as a company, and it's one of the most important needs that society has. And it's here in countries like the US and Europe, but even more important, I think, is, when I travel in sub-Saharan Africa and through India and Southeast Asia, subsistence farmers today, through better seed and other inputs, you can change their lives. And, we know tonight 800 million people will go to bed hungry. There's hundreds of thousands and millions of young people in these countries that are stunted because they're not getting enough nutrition. And these problems can be solved, and they start with farmers because typically these are the farming families, the subsistence farmers in these areas. And so how do we make sure that we remove the barriers that are there today, which a lot of it is misinformation, and governments not sure how to bring these and allow these tools for their farmers, and then how do we work across private and public collaborations to make sure farmers have access to technology in these parts of the world.
And I think that issue of hunger and food insecurity here in the US as well as globally is a really important issue to address when we're talking about food production, and that we need all systems available to all farmers to ensure productivity, to ensure better access to healthful foods. Food safety, absolutely. I mean, that's the bottom line benchmark, and then you go from there. So to end on a more positive note, that what keeps you awake at night, that creates too much stress and tension, what most excites you about the future in your segment of the industry? What are you just giddy excited about?
It's how we could functional food. So if you go and you could buy 2 different juices and one's fortified with vitamin D or vitamin C, you'd probably gravitate to the one that is the higher nutritional density. In the same way, we're looking to understand how we could increase that nutritional density just by stressing a plant. I'll give you an example. We could introduce a burst of UVB at a point in a plant's maturation. A plant gets defensive, it creates antioxidants, and then all of a sudden you have antioxidant-rich kale or something like that. So again, we're at just the tip of the iceberg of really understanding how to stress a plant and get these outcomes, and it's going to unlock a lot.
Awesome. Bryn?
Yeah, I'm excited about the pace of change. I mean, the things that David is talking about with AeroFarms, it's exciting to think about bringing those types of products to our marketplace, determining how to best communicate it to our shoppers so that they understand the benefits and they feel comfortable that it's safe. So the pace of change is exciting to me, but what really motivates me is being a part of an own brands organization, a private label function within Albertsons Companies, where we're creating high quality and affordable food and making that available to everybody. Our prices are 10 to 20% less than national brands in the stores, and so we're playing a role in really making all kinds of food accessible to shoppers, and so that's really what motivates me and gets me giddy. I'm excited to be part of that.
Yeah, so building on what Bryn said, I totally agree. It's all about innovation and the opportunities in the future. We're talking about driverless cars in the future. Farmers have been using driverless tractors for the last 5 years. And so farmers will adopt technology. And I think, the area of data science is going to transform agriculture, where farmers can use all their inputs more efficiently to maximize their harvest and minimize the environmental impact of that. And so I think that's incredibly exciting. I'm so excited that one of my sons is studying plant sciences, because I think the next 30 and 40 years in agriculture is going to be so incredibly exciting. There's going to be so much opportunity, and I'm just excited to be part of it.
Awesome. I can see the giddiness in all of your faces. Okay, well, let's turn it over to the audience. Who has, okay, we're going to go with the woman in white and wait for the microphone, and then the gentleman in the blue here. So let's go over here first. And please say your name and then stand to give us your question.
My name is Ronnie Antic, and I have a question for the gentleman next to you. What you're doing sounds so exciting, so sustainable, so expensive. So one of these 80, and so franchisable. So you have like an 80-foot tube with 3 layers or several layers that are all producing different vegetables that are all controlled in what you said. So now, you say people can come in and buy. How much food does that one tube produce, and what does it cost? Or the experimental stage now, it's free? I don't know. And can that happen? Can I buy a tube and put it down in Florida and have people come in and buy?
So we get these requests all the time, probably second to can we grow cannabis, especially here in Colorado. But right now we're focused on, AeroFarms is focused on building big farms at scale. And so that row, that's actually 12 levels of growing in a modern warehouse that's 36 feet high. There are 42 of those towers, those grow towers, and it could feed approximately 200,000 people on an annualized basis if you take per capita consumption of leafy greens. And we could grow bigger, we could grow smaller. The tension is from a food safety standpoint. We get the questions, and we have a farm that's like a quarter of the size of this platform that I'm on in a school. Michelle Obama visited it the other month, and it feeds this school in Newark of K through 8th graders. It feeds them 200 kids, all their leafy green needs. And it's very exciting. That's hyper-local, and it gets the kids very excited, and we certainly want to scale that. From a food safety standpoint, Bryn was talking about food safety. So the areas of concern is, do you have all the processes in place to deliver a food safety product? When I think of like the product in the schools, every now and then you get like pencils in the reservoir, different things. So there's items to manage. And in growing, if you look at big successful farmers, the whole term farm out your work comes, not surprisingly, from the farming industry. A lot of farmers aren't like the big farmers in the US, industrial farmers, they farm out the work. And the scale and the economies of scale happen in food processing. So when I say automation in seeding, harvesting, cleaning, packaging, that brings down our cost of goods sold. The grow towers scale in a linear way, the processing doesn't. So we could have more grow towers and utilize the capacity of the processing equipment to bring down the cost of goods sold. Because at the end of the day, the Safeways, the Albertsons aren't going to buy it if the price is too high. So we are able to manage at scale, manage our cost of goods sold, even counting depreciation. So when you think of all the capital intensity of the growing systems, that goes into our line item of our cost of goods sold, and it's a non-cash item, but it goes in as depreciation. So even weighing that in, it's cost effective, and if you remember what I was saying about Heitz's law, so the trends are going in the right direction. But the scale matters to get the cost down so it's available for everyone. In the future, AeroFarms is going to have a system that could be more micro, or hyper local for whether it's individuals building schools. But it's right now our focus is big, and as a young company, we need to be focused on big ag.
All right, thanks, David. Gentleman in the center of the room in the blue here. Let's wait for a microphone to make its way to you.
Hi, thanks everybody. My name is Mark Torsick. I'm with the Nature Conservancy. We're very focused on the environmental and conservation challenges that go with the need to grow food to feed the world going forward. So, and we respect what each of your organizations can do there. This was a really good conversation, but it seems like way too polite and friendly compared to my life. For example, we've done some very good work with Monsanto in the past. I don't think currently, but Monsanto has great scientists, and our scientists and Monsanto's have worked together very effectively on issues like nutrient runoff up and down the Mississippi River, et cetera. But to be honest, I get really vicious hate mail, even to this day, for working with Monsanto. It sort of blows my mind. And there was this article recently in Fortune about, I forget what the languages they used, but they said something like Monsanto may be the most reviled company in the history of companies. Strong stuff. So my first question is to you, David. You're, in our world, you're regarded as one of the good guys, and you should be. We respect what you do. In your private conversations with your supporters and people, what do you say about the Monsantos or DuPonts or the Dows of the world? What do you say about GMOs, Roundup, et cetera? Just what's your straightforward take on that? And to Mike, you spoke very eloquently about the need to have agricultural technology to deal with, say, sub-Saharan Africa. And in an era of climate stress, we can imagine having technologies to deal with droughts or floods could save lots of people's lives. But how much of Monsanto's work and budget and R&D is really focused on that part of the work? It's not clear to me, and it might actually help your story if you were to tell that more, but I think it's a big deal that here everybody's conversation so far has been very polite, but in the real world it's not polite, and it gets in the way of progress. And Bryn, and I'm interested in everybody's view on that topic. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'll start off. So one, just on the GMO, there's actually no GMO or very little GMO in specialty crops, so it's not an option, unfortunately, because there's probably some kind of ways to optimize there. At AeroFarms, we're relatively dumb on the genetic side. We're really good at taking a seed, and we get seeds from all over, and we're good at taking a seed and optimizing it by stressing a different way. We don't really understand the genetic side, so we don't participate in that conversation. We'd like to get smarter there, but that's just not where our capabilities are. What we do fundamentally is we make sure that our partners, and we partner with a lot of different people in different industries, whether it's the seed side or the mechanical, like pumps, sensors, lighting side. Do they share our values of how do we make this world a better place? So when I started AeroFarms, I co-chair the Circular Economy Task Force for the World Economic Forum. I was like, my last company, a nanotech company, was the first company to have a cradle-to-cradle product. Familiar with cradle-to-cradle? A lot of people consider it the highest standard of environmental consideration. I sat on the Global Agenda Council of Water Security for the World Economic Forum. My inspiration was, how do we make a better place? How do I build a company rooted in making the world a better place, the environment a better place, society a better place, and a profitable business that could scale? So when we talk about the values and more importantly the principles that are alive at AeroFarms every day, it's the lens of working with society, working in concert with the environment and so forth. And that does translate to our partners, making sure they share those values, making sure we ask ourselves these questions every day as we go forward. And it's not just a David Rosenberg thing, but as the company grows, we're still a small company, we're 92 people. But as the company grows and there's less eye touch at the organization, making sure all my direct reports share these values, share these principles, amplify them to the rest of the organization. As decisions are made every day, the most important thing we could do as leaders is be that guiding light that shares where we don't compromise. I don't know if that answers your question, or you want to be tough, or we want to go further. I'm happy to.
Let's give Mike a chance to jump in here.
So first, Mark, thanks for the question and thanks for the good work that your organization does. I think it's a very important question and it's very real. We know as a company, since we are on the leading edge of a lot of agricultural technologies, and there is a disconnect, especially in countries like the US and in Europe, where most of society is removed from farming and agriculture. So the need for this dialogue is very important, and the need to find, common goals like healthy food, safe food, sustainable planet. Those are common goals that we likely all have, and then we can talk about, well, how do we make all agriculture deliver those outcomes? To your specific question in terms of how much of our R&D budget goes into helping farmers in these other developing countries, it's a significant portion, because even though agriculture is local, a lot of the tools and technologies in breeding and GMOs are very global. So when you think about the tools that farmers have today and that we've developed in the GM space, it's largely about how to get better weed control, how to get insect control. And so the technologies that we can use here in the US also work in South America, they work in India, they work in Kenya. And so these technologies are very transportable around the world, especially in GMOs and especially in molecular breeding as well. So I would say, a lot of what we do with a global view in mind. Let me just give you an example of cotton in India. In 2005, before we brought our biotech or GM cotton to India, Indian cotton producers produced about 13 million bales of cotton a year. Last year, they produced 36 million bales of cotton. So the technology has been revolutionary. It's helped farmers move out of poverty. And it's helped the industry really grow and thrive in India. So these technologies are real. The stories are incredibly motivating. When I get a chance to go and meet with these farmers around the world, like you and your colleagues do, you get to see firsthand how these technologies can make a huge difference. And so it's a big part of what we do.
All right, do we have more questions from the audience? Gentleman over here in the brown shirt, the woman back there, and then up here, and you may be our last question. So 3 more questions.
Okay, David. I guess, there we go. David, my question is for you. With your aero cropping system, how does it affect the shelf life, getting it to the customer in comparison to row cropping?
There's, first regarding shelf life, the USDA reports that there's 62% spoilage in our category. So there's a tremendous, from time of harvest and it gets off the farm to what gets consumed. So there's a real issue there. If average shelf life is 12 days, we could have the same shelf life. Because we could deliver to the retailer in a day or 2 versus 5 on average, we asked just like we could stress and influence taste, texture, nutritional density, obviously yield, we could also stress to influence shelf life. We joke around that our plants have like this white glove lifestyle, this beautiful, relaxed lifestyle. And we could toughen them up. Just like if you walk around barefoot, at first you develop calluses on your feet, you toughen them up. We could, in the same way, stress the plant, toughen it up, extend the shelf life. We talk to the Safeways of the world and we say, Bryn, what do you want with shelf life? What do you want to amplify? And then depending how that conversation goes, and actually we've kind of taken a Steve Jobs attitude of the world of, let's not ask the customer what they want. We know the customer, we understand these issues better than they, so let's just tell them what we want. And often, because we could deliver plants in a better way, in a faster way, we find that the customer, we don't need to amplify the shelf life, and we want to amplify other qualities. But the net of your answer is it's the same, and we can make it longer or shorter depending on the variety and depending what we want to do.
All right, the woman at the table right behind there.
Hi, my question is about GMOs. So you were speaking about India, and I had thought that India recently banned GMOs in their country, and I'm really trying to understand. My son wants to be a scientist, and I love scientists. I'm all for it. However, I am baffled by what the reality is of GMOs and how it affects our food chains and how it affects crops. And I know you can grow more, but is it a healthy more? Is it just more for more sake? And who are we trying to feed with it when India has banned it, different countries in Africa has, and 28 countries in Europe have? I'm honestly baffled by the notion of GMOs. My son tells me, Mom, you have to understand it, but yet I produce a food line that is a non-GMO organic food line. So please explain to me the benefits or how it is helping us other than just growing massively more food.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And so, unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation out there about GMOs and GM technology. Just to answer your question directly on India, India has embraced biotech, including GM cotton. And so, recently, the government has said that the technology is so important, in fact, that the government should set price controls on it. So, as opposed to saying they shouldn't have it, they've said it's of such national interest that they want to set price controls on it. So if you've read something recently about India and GM, it's probably been around price controls, which is a different issue, but that's what's going on in India. I think if you look around the world in the last 12 months, governments in Vietnam, Pakistan, Kenya, Nigeria, Malawi have all approved biotech crops for the first time in the past 12 months. And so GM technologies, as Bryn said, farmers have been growing them for over 20 years. Scientists have been studying them for well over 30 years. The scientific consensus is very well established that they're safe from a consumption standpoint, from a food safety standpoint, and they're beneficial to the environment. And so they do help farmers become more sustainable. Farmers can spray less pesticides when they use BT corn or cotton and get insect control more precisely. The weed control with Roundup Ready crops has been a revolution for farmers across the Americas where they use the technology, which is why farmers have embraced it so rapidly. So if you spend some time on a farm with a farmer and ask about why do you use these tools, you'll get the answer of the benefits. And if you spend time with scientists, you'll hear overwhelming consensus that the technologies are beneficial and safe. Now, you're producing organic food, which is fantastic. Again, we talked about the fact that, in the US, consumers want choice and they need choice. And so, again, we do a lot of work with organic producers to help them become more productive. I think this area of data science is an outstanding field, which will apply in organic agriculture and conventional agriculture. So the conversation should be around how do we make all of agriculture more efficient, more sustainable, and more productive, because the world does need more food. In the next 30 years, farmers have to produce twice as much food as they have today, and that's important. So how do we do that?
So we are unfortunately out of time, Ruth. I'm sorry, I promised you an opportunity, but we are being cut off. There's another session starting in here shortly. I want to thank our panelists for a very thoughtful, robust discussion. To our friend from the Nature Conservancy, yes, it was very polite, but we wanted to focus on issues, not of arguments. So I'm going to ask the panelists, I sense that there may be a few folks in the room who want to corner these folks. Let's go over to the side of the room. That'll allow the other speakers to come forward. Thank you very much for being a wonderful audience. Enjoy the rest of your day here.
Thank you.